Hello everybody. Hi Jeff, we are back with Jeff Spoelstra here talking about loans, mortgages, how to buy a house in Silicon Valley, and what you need to know and to do if you decide to buy a house. Hey Jeff.
Hey Anna, it's good to see you again.
Good to see you. All right, we had really good feedback last time, so we're gonna continue doing it because it helps people to get educated on this process and not being so anxious about it. So today we're gonna talk about just first steps. You thinking about buying a house, what do you need to do? So first thing, you need to talk to a loan officer, and I strongly recommend that you talk to a loan officer that your realtor has a working relationship with. So your first step probably gonna be find an agent, interview 2 or 3 agents, pick one that you feel like gonna be a good fit for you, and then ask them who are they working with, who is their loan officer. Because you want to make sure that those 2 people have a business relationship, they know how to work with each other, and they're going to make this process most seamless and efficient for you. And also a lot of listing agents, they will ask if an agent knows the loan officer. So if you go and get pre-approved with someone online, that will play against you when you submit an offer. So now you got in touch with loan officer. Jeff, what will be the first step? You meet first time with people, they tell you we want to buy a house. What will be your conversation? What do they need to do?
Well, let me back up one step. I think what you just said is really critical, Anna, that the agent that you're working with and the loan officer have worked together before. That's just so important because there's a chemistry there. They know how to do offers. They know how to make them competitive. They know what works and what doesn't work. You know, you're working with somebody who's local, somebody who knows the market, knows what it takes. They're not just some Rocket Mortgage random person in Florida who's just going to treat you like an application and has no idea what it takes to win a deal or win a purchase in Santa Clara County versus, you know, Fresno or, you know, Cleveland, Ohio, right? That's a really good point. Okay, so let's get back to your real question. So what do you need to do? You come and talk to me, you talk to Anna and she says, go see Jeff. What am I gonna do? We're gonna have a conversation because I want to understand what it is you want to do and what your financial circumstances are, because everybody's different. There's no cookie cutter, you know, oh, stamp out a loan, here you go, you stamp out a loan. It's not you get a car, you get a loan. It doesn't work that way.
We right? Passed that. We saw what it does, right?
Yeah, it's just, no, that's not good, right? You need somebody who wants to know what you want and what your circumstances are, right? And so that means what's your income, what do you have for money that you can put into the deal, what's your credit history. Are you going to need assistance, like down payment assistance, or are you getting money from relatives as a gift, or do you have, you know, what's your income? Are you hourly? Are you salaried? Are you self-employed? Do you have a business? You know, all of this stuff is, I mean, it's normal stuff, but it's all important to what kind of a loan is best for you, right? And that's my job, is to find the loan that's best for you. I don't just want to give you any old random loan. I want to give you the loan that's going to suit your purchase and is going to suit the lifestyle you want after the purchase, right? And so we're going to have that conversation, and then it's going to get down to, okay, well, then let's get down to the nuts and bolts, right? I'm going to need to get a loan application from you. Well, that's simple. You go online to my website, it'll take you 10 minutes, right? And then I'm going to need documentation from you. You know, you're telling me you're making $275,000 a year. Well, I need proof. You know, the 2007, 2008 recession proved that we need proof, right? You can't tell me that, you know, you're a baggage checker at Safeway and you're making $220,000 a year. Okay, great, good for you. I want that job. So it's going to be up to documentation, and then, you know, if all that matches up and everything is good, you know, I'm going to send you, you know, an example scenario that says, well, this is the loan that I think is best for you, what your payment's going to be, what your closing costs are going to look like. and we're going to talk about it so that you understand the numbers, right? Because it's not my purchase, right? You have to understand the numbers and what you're doing so that you can make an intelligent decision, right? And if we're all good to go, then you are pre-approved, and you go and talk to Anna and you say, find me a home, I want to buy now. And she goes and does it. That's the way it works.
So I wanted to touch on a couple points you mentioned. So let's say someone is expecting a gift money. I had a couple clients that their parents in different country were transferring some gift money to them, or they had money in different accounts. Do you think that people should start moving it themselves, or should they first talk to you and then kind of have a strategy when to do that and how to do it correctly, so it doesn't raise red flags and it doesn't compromise their qualification for the loan?
Right. It kind of depends, right? It depends on how much of it, where it's coming from, and what form it's in, in the other country, right? And to some extent, it depends on an individual, the individual title companies and escrow companies. How are they willing to accept direct transfer of funds from foreign bank accounts, or does it need to be in a U.S. bank account first? And even some loans are going to require that you've put it into a U.S. bank account first. So it's going to be dependent on the situation, but you just have to be, you have to be sure that those funds are readily, and we call them liquid, right? That
exactly.
within 3 days of me saying you need that money now, it shows up where it has to show up. If it's the kind of thing where, once you say go, it's going to take 60 days to get it, that's not going to work when you're in the middle of a transaction. So
in terms of a credit score, what is the ideal credit score to get best terms and best rates?
975,000.
What is the minimum?
Well, that depends on the loan, right? I mean, really, minimum can be as low as 560, but you're not going to get a good interest rate, right? And you're probably going to have to pay for whatever interest rate you get. So you've heard the term points. You're probably going to have to pay extra to get any kind of an interest rate. But if you're 720, that's a good score, right? That's going to get you, pretty average normal rates. If you're over 800, that's an exceptionally good score, and you're going to get the best terms and the best pricing. So, but again, that depends on the loan, right? Some loans 720 is a minimum, and you just have to be there.
So I would say 720. If you're above 720, you should get pretty good loan. So people should strive to be somewhere there. Let's say someone comes to you and their credit score is not great. Are you qualified to give them advice on how to bring their score up, or is there any professionals that can help them with that?
To a very limited degree. Sometimes we can actually query the credit bureaus to say, hey, we need to raise this score just 5 points, right? What can they do to raise their score 5 points, right? But if you're 100 points off, you're at 480, and we need to try to get you to 680. That's a whole different matter. You've got to work with real credit repair professionals to do that. Because that's going to be a much longer, more involved process. So, I don't give people credit advice. I know things that have gone wrong for people in the past when they've done certain things, and like I said, we can query for minor changes. But if it comes down to a significant thing, you've really got to work with some outside people.
All right, so that's about credit score. Talk about debt to income ratio. What does it mean? What people need to know about it?
Debt to income ratio, that is the most important number of all of them when it comes to qualifying for a loan, because that will determine if you are going to get a loan or not. And everything rolls into that number: your credit score, your income, all of it rolls into that number. So let's unpack it. Debt to income is not a measure of how much debt you are in. It is a measure of how much you have to pay on your debt on a monthly basis, right? You could be $20 million in debt, but if you're only paying $100 a month to pay it off, I only care about the $100 a month. You could be only $20,000 in debt, but if you're paying $1,000 a month on it, I care about the $1,000, right? So it's a measure of how much you are obligated to pay on a monthly basis for all the things that show up on your credit report, right? And so that would be car loans, student loans, car leases, credit cards, yada, yada. Okay. So the way DTI works is we're going to look at two things. We're going to look at what are your monthly obligations going to be for the home that you want to buy, your principal and interest on the mortgage, your property taxes on a monthly basis, your insurance on a monthly basis. And if there's an HOA, what is that? We call those PITIA for association if there's a homeowner, but you'll hear it abbreviated PITI.
Yeah.
Right. Those are the things you must pay on a monthly basis, or you are going to lose the home. It's going to be taken away from you. I don't care about your utilities. I don't care about your cable bill. I don't care about your grocery bill. Those 5 things, if you default on them, you will lose your ownership of your home. And that's the last thing that we as a lender want to have happen. Right.
So that brings us to one of the things that a lot of people miss when they looking at they thinking about buying a home, and they focusing on the big number, on the price, how much it costs, and they freak out. And I always advise people to look at monthly payment, the affordability, right? So that's exactly how this relates to affordability. So what is affordability? How do we look at it?
Well, that's where DTI comes in, because DTI is created, the sole purpose of DTI is to make sure it's affordable for you, right? So we're going to take that PIT number, and we're going to add to it every other monthly obligation that shows up on your credit report. Again, car loans, student loans, your minimum credit card payments, all that stuff we're going to take off your credit report. We're going to add all that stuff together. So we're going to get one number that is how much you owe on a monthly basis for all that stuff. And we're going to divide that by your gross monthly qualifying income. And that's going to give us your debt to income ratio. Right? Now, why that is a measure of affordability is because every loan has a limit. I can't use 70% of your gross monthly income to get you a loan. That's not going to work, right? To the typical maximum is 50%. So typically no more than 50% of your gross monthly qualifying income can be used to pay off all that stuff. So you have to have at least 50% left over to pay for everything else, to cover all your other living expenses, right? Many loans are less than that. Some have a 45% limit. Some have a 43% limit. Some even have a 35% limit. Yeah. So that number is critical because it's the measure of affordability.
Okay. So again, for everybody out there who is freaking out from the prices in the Bay Area, remember, you don't need to look at that, $1.5 million, because most likely you're not going to be living in this home for 30 years, and most likely you're not going to pay for 30 years. Very few people that actually stay in their home, one first house forever. You need to focus on if you can afford this house on a monthly basis. If you can qualify for a mortgage, most likely the underwriter and the lender already checked that you can afford to pay a certain amount. So that should be your focus. The monthly payment is the main focus. So now, next, you had the initial consultation with people. Let's say everything is perfect. They had wonderful credit score. They have correct debt to income ratio. They can qualify for a mortgage. Now they submitted all the documents to you. Can you tell us a little bit, what is the difference between pre-qualification, pre-approval, and full approval after underwriting?
Okay. Pre-qualification and pre-approval sometimes get used interchangeably, which is unfortunate because technically they mean different things. Pre-qualification means, okay, we've talked, you've given me an application, the numbers on your application look good. I think based on just your application, we could get you a loan. That's what pre-qualification is.
Yeah.
Pre-approval is, okay, now you've provided me the documentation that backs it up, right? I've really looked at your credit report. I've really seen your income documentation. You've given me bank statements that prove you've got the money, all that stuff, and everything matches up, right? And it all looks good that you can afford to get a loan of XYZ amount, right? That's a pre-approval. It hasn't been to underwriting. Underwriting is a different story. but at least from my perspective and my experience, I think an underwriter would give you the loan based on what you've given me. Now, that's sufficient for you to make an offer, right? Most listing agents and sellers are going to expect that you have been pre-approved. Pre-qualification means nothing. It really means nothing.
Yeah. Okay.
They're going to expect you to be pre-approved and have a letter from a lender like me that says, John and Mary Smith are pre-approved to make this purchase, right? The next step we can go is called pre-underwriting, or it's called conditional approval, or however you want to do it. But what that means is then that I've taken the information you've given me and I've given it to one of our underwriters, who is the person who does make the final yes or no decision, and asked them for their opinion, right? So they're going to look at your income and your credit and your assets and your application and all that stuff. And they're going to validate that your pre-approval is indeed good, right? So they've at least gone through all that stuff and said, yep, you look fine. It's called a conditional approval because it's not a full approval. You're still not in contract. We still don't have an appraisal, all the stuff that we would need to do a final approval. But we've gone as far as we can go. There's no farther that we can go to get you approved until you are in contract.
So all you need to do now, find a house, put an offer, get it accepted, and get it appraised.
How hard can that be? That's all you got to do.
That's it.
That's when I look at on it and go, okay, it's in your court. You just got to find them the house. I got them the money. You got to find them the house.
Right. And we have to put a very, very strong competitive offer to get it approved. But your offer gonna look so much better if you have it underwritten.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because it pretty much tells the seller that you're gonna get the money 99%, unless you go and I don't know, you buy Ferrari the next day.
There are many things not to do once we get to that stage.
And that's how we get to the point why once you decide to buy a house, you need to be very, very mindful what you put on your credit cards, what you buy, if you take additional loans. So if you have any other projects going on and you have other expenses that you need to do, I suggest do them before. And then once you're ready, then go and start the house purchasing process. Because if your car is breaking down and you have to buy a car right now, it's not a good time to apply for a mortgage. So, you know, that is really critical. And also, once you already started doing this, you know, you already applied, you got pre-approved, you're working with a realtor, you're working with a lender, something happens and you have to spend a big amount of money, please let your lender and your agent know before you do anything, before you hand your credit card to someone and you swipe it, okay? Because that can totally, you know, ruin your chances of buying a house, especially if you're in contract.
Absolutely. So please don't surprise me.
I've
never been surprised in a good way yet. So please don't surprise me.
And I had a client who was so, you know, dedicated and so careful on that he would even call it. My friend actually shared it with me. He would call and ask her if he can buy groceries with his credit card.
I've had people ask that too.
Some people are super, you know, super careful, but most people will do the opposite.
I mean, live your normal life. Just don't do something unusual. That's all.
Yeah, exactly. Or so can you get pre-approved if your money is in, let's say, some brokerage account, or it's in a Bitcoin or cryptocurrency?
Oh, you made two entirely different worlds there.
Okay. Okay, no crypto. Let's say just in brokerage account.
Yeah, I mean, if you've got money in an investment account, I mean, that's normal, natural place for money to be, right? Okay. So you don't necessarily have to liquidate it immediately to get pre-approved. You just got to prove to me that you've got the stock to back it up, right?
Okay.
You know, it's up to you how much risk you want to take with the market, when you want to pull it out, and how long you want to keep it in. But you know, if the market crashes the day after I give you a pre-approval, well, that might mean your pre-approval isn't going to work anymore. Exactly. So that risk is on you. But no, money in bank accounts, brokerage accounts, IRA accounts, you know, all those standard financial institutions, that's fine. we can deal with it.
Okay. Can you use your 401k money, your retirement money, for the down payment on your first primary residence home?
Absolutely. Now you can do it. You can do it a couple different ways, right? Depending on what your 401k plan supports, and unfortunately, they're all radically different. So you have to actually go to your terms. I mean, if it allows you to do a withdrawal for a home purchase, and that's what you want to do, sure, that's fine. It's just cash, right? It's just, you're just moving it from one place to another. My typical recommendation, though, is don't do a withdrawal unless you really feel compelled to do it, because you're going to get hit by deferred taxes on it and a 10% penalty if you're not at retirement age and all that yada yada. Get a loan instead. If your plan supports you getting a
loan, basically.
And I don't care, because that loan doesn't show up on your credit report. It's a loan against your own assets. And as Anna said, you're borrowing from yourself to improve yourself.
Yeah.
To me, it's just cash. I don't care, right? So that's an ideal way to use a 401k to get money to for a down payment or whatever you need it for.
Okay, so that just gives some people, a new way of looking at it. They might think they need to have this money in their savings account, but most people who are, have stable jobs and work for a big company, they do have some sort of employer plan, and they don't realize that they could use that money to buy a home. And as history shows, it's usually a good investment, because appreciation is always there, especially in our area. So don't be afraid, and stock market probably not going to perform as well as appreciation here if we look in long term. So you're not gonna, lose a lot or lose anything, I would say, if you, let's say, borrow some money from yourself for the down payment on your house, especially if you don't have any home and it's your first house. So now we got pre-approved, underwritten, we in contract. Yay, we in contract.
Hey, good for you.
So now what is the next step? What do we need to expect? What's going to happen?
Well, then it all becomes real, right? Once you're in contract, then the real ball starts rolling in terms of getting you the real money, right? So, and it depends on how long that's going to take, right? If I gave you a pre-approval and you got in contract the next day, well, good, your documentation is still good. If it took you 3 months to get in contract, we're probably going to need some updated documents, right? We're going to need to see new statements and do a new credit report and all that stuff.
Was that rate that you gave initially, is that rate still qualified if it's, let's say, it took 3 months and people, were approved for, I don't know, 3.5 3 months ago, and they got in contract today? What rate are they going to get?
Whatever today is. And that is a big risk right now, because a lot of people, and I've had to go through and reapprove many of my buyers several times in the last 4 or 5 weeks, because the rates have changed and they've gone up, and that lowered their affordability, right? Exactly. So yeah, your interest rate is not locked in at that number just because it says it on your pre-approval. Your interest rate is not locked in until you are in contract on a purchase.
So it gets locked when you're in contract, not after you get appraisal. So once you're in contract, that's when it gets locked, that day.
Well, we can lock it in a typical scenario. We can lock it anytime after you are in contract, right? It doesn't have to be the day of, right? If we were in a market where there was an equal chance of interest rates going down as going up, you might want to float, right? And just say, well, let's just sit on it for a couple of days and see what happens, right? But we're not in that situation right now.
Yeah.
We're in a situation where you're fortunate if it stays stable for a couple of days, because it's more likely to go up in a couple of days. So, right now the pattern is you get in contract, we're going to lock that sucker immediately to avoid that risk. Now there are, and again, every answer to every question, like I've always said, is it depends.
Yeah.
Right. There are plans where you can lock an interest rate ahead of actually being in contract, but there's certain timing involved and there may be extra fees involved, right? So you have to be really certain that you're going to be in contract, say, in the next 30 days to take advantage of an early lock. or, if you're buying a brand new construction, they just built the unit, you're going to be the first person living in it. We can lock that up to a year in advance. But it's a special situation, and it requires, some upfront stuff to do that. But typically, once you're in contract, then we can start locking in the terms of your actual loan.
Yeah. Okay, so now we in contract, we are ordering appraisal. By the way, I had a whole another separate interview with appraiser who has 30 years experience, so feel free to watch it. I'm going to put link to it. So that's a whole another topic about appraisals. So now there's a big major fear about appraisal, especially in this market, that it's not going to appraise. What does it mean it's not going to appraise?
Well, so the thing to know is your loan amount is going to be based on the lower of your purchase price or the appraised value, right? So if you've offered $1.8 million for a home at 20% down, that's great. But if it appraises for $1.6 million, well, your loan amount is going to be based on 20% less than the $1.6 million number, right? So you've got a $200,000 appraisal gap between your price and what it really appraised for.
Yeah. And so does it mean that now people just have to find that extra $200,000 to cover the gap, or other options that they can still get a loan somehow without getting extra cash?
It depends, right? And that's where you got to have an agent like Anna on your team, right? Because she can tell you, well, based on my experience in this neighborhood, this environment, this property, this price, this is what we need to do to kind of mitigate that, right? So maybe instead of putting 20% down, you put 10% down, you take a little bit of mortgage insurance, or maybe you pay up front. You don't have to do mortgage insurance on a monthly basis. You can pay up front for it and never have to pay it monthly. And there's many, many times where it makes sense to have a 10% down payment. You pay the upfront one-time mortgage insurance fee as part of your closing cost, and you've got that remaining, however much money that you can use as an appraisal mitigation, right? And so, if you write an offer that is not contingent on the appraisal, you can handle a certain gap. Right? So there's many ways to deal with it, but you just need to know up front and work with Anna to say, all right, what's the real risk of this offer not appraising? So
there are options of sort of restructuring loan or getting additional loan, but ideally, and that's where we come into the picture, we will advise you and we'll look at your finances to have that, extra cushion that you can cover if appraisal comes low. What are the fees that people can expect? So how much they need to account on for the additional fees on top of the actual the down payment, and what else is there? What are the expenses?
You mean like the closing cost? Is that what you're
closing costs? Yes.
Okay. The closing cost is this bucket that a lot of stuff gets dumped into, right? And there's no good rule of thumb for trying to predict what it's going to be in advance, right? You can't just say, oh, it's always 1.5% of the purchase price. No, it doesn't work that way, because there are fees that are based on the purchase price. There are fees that are based on the loan amount. There are fees that are based on location. There are just plain flat rate fees that you pay. There's just this hodgepodge of stuff that gets dumped into this bucket, right? It's kind of like my explanation of closing costs to people is it's like you go buy a TV, right? You go to Best Buy and the TV you love is $1,000. Well, you're not going to walk out of the store paying $1,000, right? You're going to go to the checkout and they're going to pay sales tax. Well, that's based on a percentage of your sales price. Okay. Then they're going to ask you, do you want an extended warranty? Oh, I didn't think about that. Sure. Okay. Well, there's another $200, right? Do you want it delivered? Oh yeah, it'll never fit in my car. Okay. Well, there's another $100, right? Do you want it installed? Yeah, I have no idea how to put this together. Okay. Well, there's another $200, right? all that extra stuff is closing costs,
right?
And some of it's percentage based, some of it's just a flat fee. So
yeah,
it's really hard to predict, but you can depending on the price and the just general stuff, right? You're going to be looking at, probably for a typical Santa Clara County home, you're going to be looking at $10,000 to $25,000 in closing costs.
so percentage wise, you would say have additional like extra 5 to 6% or something like
Well,
that.
if you tell me I've got $100,000 that I can put the down payment, my
Mhm.
first question is going to be, is $100,000 all that you have? And if you say yes, then I'm going to say, okay, that's not all going to down payment. We're gonna until I know what you're buying and
Right.
what your closing costs are really going to be, we're going to set aside 20,000 of that, again, based on what I think your real closing costs would be.
Mhm.
But we're going to set aside 20,000 of that to cover closing costs. You really have an $80,000 down payment. Okay,
Yeah.
now let's work with that. Right.
Yeah. So, all right. So we got this all figured out. We got appraisal. Now, appraisal came at value. We looking at best case scenario here, right? And so far, I have to say, luckily that it happened to me. All my buyers got their appraisals at value, and everything was beautiful. But
See, that's why you work with Anna, because she just does this stuff. It just happens. You don't have to worry about it.
It's just, I don't know. With this market, nobody can predict anything, and every time it's like you just pray and you cross your fingers and you're like, okay, let's hope. Even though we do look at evaluation and market analysis, of course, and if the price doesn't come from just from sky, you do look at what appraisal gonna look, right?
Right.
But with market that homes are selling in 3 days and the appreciation is so fast, it's very, very hard to sometimes to estimate what it's going to be. So now on your end, funding, what happens? Closing, what do the buyer should expect?
Well, I mean, you're in contract, so the next 25, 30 days or whatever that escrow period is going to be based on your contract. I mean, that's when your final loan is going to be approved, right? So it'll be about documentation. It'll be about getting the appraisal and making sure there's nothing in the appraisal that would prevent you from getting a loan. It's going to be about just revalidating your income, really checking with your employer that, oh yeah, they're still employed. Yeah, they didn't just quit yesterday, kind of a deal. Right. And so we're going to get the final approval.
Another thing, don't change your jobs in the middle of
Oh, please, dear God, don't do that.
Yeah, we forgot. Not only don't buy a fancy car, but stay with the same employer.
That's right. And don't go on leave.
Yes, please
don't do any of this stuff, because it just that's the reason why I stay up at night. It's like, oh my God, what did you just do?
Yes, very, very
right. So we're going to get that final underwriter approval that says, yep, give them the money. And then it's a pretty turn the crank kind of a process, right? The next step is you're going to get this much documentation that you're going to have to sign. Although we almost 90% of the time we do it electronically now. So you're going to get a big packet of stuff by email to sign digitally, and there's a couple things that still have to be signed by hand because the state of California lives in the dark ages, even though we're the high-tech capital of the world. So do
they sign? Do they need to go somewhere, or the notary will come to their house?
It typically pre-COVID, most people would just go to the title company office because they would have the notary there and they would just have it all and like all that. But with COVID, the notion of mobile notaries and the notaries coming to your house or to where you're working so that you can get everything signed, that's like the norm these days, right? Yeah. So you can have an appraiser, or a notary come to your house and sit there with you with the documents and make sure everything gets signed.
It's about an hour sometimes.
Yeah, but again, at Guild we do 95% of our paperwork is all done electronically. Awesome. Right? So even that last step, might take 25 minutes because the notary just has to have you sign a couple stuff. And then once all the documentation is in and everything looks good, then our funder says, yeah, go. They push the button and your loan money goes into escrow, and then you got to make sure all the rest of the money is in escrow. And then Anna gets happy because then escrow says, hey, we have everything. We're going to record the change of ownership tomorrow.
The magic words.
And then, you know, once the change of ownership is confirmed at the county, then you get the keys and you just became a homeowner.
Awesome. Here we are. We got to the end. Happy end.
Happy ending. And you throw a great housewarming party and we show up.
Yes, exactly. So here you go. Now you know exactly how to buy a house. You can go and do it on yourself. No, you cannot.
No, you cannot.
You cannot.
You need Anna and me. That's
you heard how many steps are involved, how many nuances and this is just, you know, quick overview. Every situation, every person has something specific to them. So please don't start from, you know, going on open houses and Zilloing, because it's not gonna bring you anywhere. If you find a perfect home tomorrow and you don't have pre-approval and you don't have an agent you're working with, you probably 99.9% not gonna get this house, you know. So even if you have cash, still not all cash is equal. You still need to get you know, check that everything is in order and you indeed can use that cash, and you still need someone to represent you and help you with paperwork and be on your side and protect your rights. So this is it for today. Next time we're gonna go over sellers, right? We're gonna talk about if you have a home but you want to upgrade or downgrade or move or whatever, you want to sell and buy. So this is going to be our next topic. Stay tuned and happy Friday. Bye, everybody.
Bye, y'all.